They always saw her as the quiet woman who swept the mess hall floors, a soft-spoken lady with tired eyes and a posture that blended into the background. But on one unforgettable afternoon, when an accident put an entire Marine training squad at risk, the young recruits watched her move with a precision and confidence none of them had ever seen. And in that moment, they learned the truth about the woman they had been ignoring for months. The woman they called Auntie. The woman who cooked their meals and cleaned their tables. The woman who had more combat experience than their entire unit combined. And that day, their lives changed forever. Camp Ridgefield was always loud, boot steps, shouted orders, clanging metal from the obstacle courses. But in the middle of all that noise, Maria Hale moved like silence itself. She was short, in her early 50s, wearing the same faded sweater almost every day. She kept her hair tied low and her eyes down. She served food, wiped counters, and never spoke unless someone greeted her first. Most Marines didn't know where she came from. Many assumed she was just a civilian worker. Some joked she was scared of the recruits. She never corrected them. But Staff Sergeant Miller, sharp-eyed, disciplined, 20 years in service, watched her sometimes from afar. Something about her posture bothered him. She walked like someone who had once marched. She lifted crates like someone who knew how to distribute weight. She scanned rooms like someone who had trained for danger. But Miller didn't pry. Everyone carried their own ghosts. The young Marines, though, restless, energetic, loud, paid her no mind. They laughed, shouted, teased, threw their plates on the counter without a thank you. And Maria, always smiled softly and continued working. But late at night, when the base quieted, she would sit alone at the empty picnic table under the old oak tree, staring at the distant hillside as if waiting for ghosts to walk out of the dark. Something about her sadness was too deep to belong to an ordinary woman. The new squad, fresh, cocky, full of pride, had been struggling with discipline. Especially Private Jackson, fast but reckless, Private Torres, strong but hot-headed, and Private Lee, a brilliant marksman but emotionally shut down. They argued constantly. They joked during drills. They underestimated every danger. And Maria? She heard their arguments while mopping the mess hall floor. She saw their frustration while refilling the salad bar. She watched their immaturity with a quiet sense of familiarity. One evening, she found Jackson angrily punching a wall behind the dining building. "Are you hurt?" she asked softly. He scoffed. "Just leave it, Auntie. You wouldn't understand." Jackson walked away, but he didn't realize Maria was watching his fist, the way it trembled, the way anger hid fear. She recognized that look. She had seen it too many times in young soldiers who carried more pressure than they admitted. She exhaled, long and slow. Something bad was coming. 3 days later, the squad was sent for live scenario field training in a remote forest segment. It was supposed to be a controlled simulation, dummy explosives, mock ambushes, smoke grenades. But something went terribly wrong. A piece of old, forgotten equipment, an unstable training charge from years ago, detonated by accident during a navigation drill. The blast shook the ground. Trees snapped. Smoke billowed everywhere. Young Marines panicked and scattered. Staff Sergeant Miller radioed frantically. "Unit fractured. Visibility low. We need support." Back at the base, everyone ran toward the vehicles. Everyone except Maria. She didn't move. She just listened. Her breathing slowed. Her eyes narrowed. And the quiet woman everyone ignored suddenly stood straighter, sharper, harder, like a soldier awakening after years of hiding. She whispered to herself. "Not again, please, not again." Then she ran, not away, but toward the armory. Maria grabbed a field medic kit with the ease of a seasoned veteran. Then she reached for something she had sworn never to touch again, a radio headset. She slipped it on. Her voice, which had always been soft, now turned steady, commanding, dangerous. Sergeant Miller, this is Hale. I'm en route. Give me positions. A long silence followed. Miller froze. Hale? There was only one Hale he knew, one legendary name whispered through Marine folklore. One operative who had disappeared years ago. One soldier whose missions were still classified. Ma'am, who are you? Miller answered. But Maria didn't respond to that question. Not yet. She sprinted across the base, movements sharp and efficient like someone trained in evasive combat. She commandeered a small transport buggy and drove straight toward the forest. The officers didn't stop her. Something about her energy told them she belonged there more than anyone else. Deep inside the forest, Jackson, Torres, and Lee were trapped behind fallen logs. Smoke burned their lungs. Jackson's leg was bleeding. Torres was trying to stay calm. Lee's hands shook so badly he couldn't reload his training rifle. We're done, Lee panicked. Then they heard footsteps, light, fast, purposeful. A shadow appeared through the smoke. Auntie. Jackson whispered in disbelief. But Maria didn't even turn toward them. She dropped to her knees beside Jackson, assessed his injury in seconds, applied pressure, wrapped his leg with perfect medical precision. Stay low, stay quiet, breathe slow, she ordered. Her voice had changed. It carried authority. Strength. Experience. Torres finally asked, voice trembling. Who are you? Maria looked him in the eyes, steady, fearless. Someone who promised never to let another young soldier die on my watch. Staff Sergeant Miller finally caught up with them. Breathless, shocked, confused. Ma'am, why didn't you tell us who you were? But Maria didn't answer immediately. She helped Jackson stand. She directed Torres to secure the perimeter. She taught Lee how to control his breathing to stop panic attacks. Only when everyone was safe did she finally speak. Fingers trembling slightly, she pulled out a small, worn identification tag from inside her sweater. It read. Major Maria Hale, United States Marine Corps. Special Operations, retired honorably. The recruits stood frozen. Their mouths fell open. Even Miller felt the hairs rise on his arms. Maria continued quietly. I led a special recon unit overseas. My team was young, too young. We walked into an ambush. I survived. They didn't. After that, I couldn't wear the uniform anymore. I just wanted silence. A place to be useful without being feared. She looked at the young Marines, really looked at them. But watching you, reminded me of them. Jackson swallowed hard. We never knew. You weren't supposed to. Her voice cracked, just slightly. After the medevac vehicles arrived and everyone was safe, the young Marines gathered around Maria. No longer shy. No longer disrespectful. No longer blind. Jackson stood tall on his bandaged leg. Ma'am, we owe you our lives. Maria shook her head. You owe me nothing. Just learn. Grow. Become better than you were yesterday. That's all any soldier can do. Torres wiped tears from his face. Lee saluted her, hands steady for the first time. And Staff Sergeant Miller, with complete respect, spoke softly. The base doesn't need a ghost anymore, Major. It needs a mentor. Maria looked at the forest, the smoke clearing with the wind. She felt something inside her loosen, something that had been locked away for years. Maybe, she whispered. It's time I stopped hiding. The sun broke through the clouds. The young Marines stood around her, not as rowdy recruits anymore, but as soldiers who had finally learned what real strength looked like. A quiet woman who had carried the weight of a battlefield in her heart. A woman who had saved them without hesitation. A woman who showed them that heroes don't always roar. Sometimes, heroes whisper.